Hey there viewers, and welcome back to another Campfire Tales. Today we have a special episode. Originally I was going to go over Yellow Halogen until much later, however after casually listening to it I realized that this story is pretty important before we head back to more murder drones. It's not very appreciated by the community, and after obsessing over it for several weeks, I think it's safe to say it's a bit of a hidden gem. Oh, one more thing. I kidnapped this guy named Doki. He seemed like he could help me with tonight's episode. Say hi to the viewers, friend.
Hey y'all, I'm Boydoy, and you might already recognize me because I'm basically the only other sstwl YouTuber around these parts. I've listened to the story of Yellow Halogen 4 times now, so I'll share tidbits of lore and info where I see fit. Cake has been kind enough to let me jump into the script wherever I like, so I'll be in and out occasionally. Cake might think he might have kidnapped me, but I get to do commentary without editing, so really, it's the other way around. Enjoy the rabblings of two individuals who are far too fixated on a creepypasta series from 2015 that's hated by its own creator.
We start our story once again with none other than John Matthews. However, this time, John actually has a mom and a sister, a hot sister apparently, but no dad. He's not allowed to be happy after all. His sister's name is Lily, and I forgot the hot mom's name, so I'll just call her Hot Mom. John and Lily have a special eye condition that makes their eyes look milky gray like dead fish people. This detail is never important in the story, but I like to believe that it was a plot device for season 2. More on that later. It seems that the family has been having some problems. John's thick mom has attracted a creep that's been stalking her for a while, so John decides to do something about it, and in typical modern fashion, he starts cyber harassing the stalker with anonymous text messages. John seems to be trying to make him think that he will be the next victim of a local serial killer. Yes, you heard that right. There is a killer on the loose. A killer among us, you could say. And John hopes to scare Mr. Stalker by sending death threats. Brilliant! Everything was going good until one day the stalker starts texting Hot Mom again, but this time he's being extra weird. The stalker keeps rambling about a relationship they don't have, and he's gone from asking for nudes to asking for feet pics. This unsettles John, and he decides to visit him to figure out what's going on. However, his friend Max and Sarah try to stop him and talk some sense into him, but John doesn't listen. The streets are empty and heavily patrolled by the local police because of the serial killer, and John seems to be under the impression that the killer only kills certain types of people that don't meet his description. For the life of me, I don't remember if we are ever told an official pattern to the victims, but John seems to think that only creepers are getting death noted.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick to give some details that will help later. There are no known patterns to the killing, but John was going to fabricate fake police documents and give them to the stalker to make him think he was the next in a non-existent pattern. John also specified that it was his sister Lily who apparently came up with the initial idea, which is something I may come back to later. And if you couldn't tell already, this story has way more darker aspects than any of Liam's other series. But don't worry, it only gets worse. Back to you, Cake.
Once he arrives at the house, he witnesses something rather peculiar. A scrawny baddie shows up and starts doing weird things. First, it sounds like a weird radio turned on, but then the girl in the yellow halogen coat starts talking like Hot Mom, and she starts giving instructions to Mr. Stalker. We can't quite see her face, and it seems she doesn't want to be seen because she orders him to turn off his front porch lights. Slowly but surely, our mystery woman begins to lure the stalker outside of his home. They have a short conversation that doesn't make sense. The stalker keeps talking about John and Lily as if the woman in the yellow was Hot Mom. Then she kisses him and strange black goo comes out of his mouth. The woman in yellow is becoming more frustrated and the stalker is becoming more sickly and delusional. Eventually, he reveals he's more interested in John's sister, Lily, under his drunken stupor. This enrages the woman, and she changes her voice to Lily's voice. She then brings out a strange spike from under her sleeve, and she slashes the man's neck. His blood comes out all messed up. It's weirdly colored and it reeks of rot. Immediately she notices John, and it's revealed that the killer has a strange yellow eye while the other one is blue, and naturally, John realizes that he's in another scary storytime with Liam episode, and this week won't be normal after all. The cops show up rather quickly, and they point out how the death of Mr. Stalker marks the 4th death of the serial killer. They know this because of the method they died, and the decomposition of their blood. John then runs away from the scene of the crime. He doesn't know what to make of it, and he's not sure if he can trust his sister after what he heard. When he gets home, his sister Lily is there, and they both have an awkward moment where it seems that they're both lying about what they did earlier that day. The next day, John starts freaking out because he realizes that the cops are going to look at his death threats he sent to Mr. Stalker, and he might get blamed for the murders. But then there's a break-in at his house while he was at school. Hot Mom was found babbling about Sarah breaking into the house despite her being at school with John. The entire house was flipped as if the intruder was looking for something, but nothing was taken. Mom then gets sent to the hospital because she's not making any sense and is drooling suspicious black goo that no one else but John notices for some reason. So John decides that he's going to have to solve the mystery and find the killer. The killer among us. He decides to drop Lily off at a friend's house and heads back to the hospital to check up on Mom. When he gets there, the nurse says that his sister already came in and left after she was told that visiting hours were over. John freaks out and runs out to Mom's room. The nurse panics and calls for security. When John enters the room, he comes face to face with the yellow halogen woman once again, and this time she was getting ready to cut Mom with her strange needle. John tries to stop her, but she runs away. Chat then says no balls, and John chases down after her. But he falls into a trap of some kind. There are strange strings coming out of her sleeves, and they seem to paralyze John upon contact. John can't seem to do anything about it, and he's then picked up by the police, where they arrest him for suspicion of murder. By the way, this is the last time that we ever get to see Hot Mom. The cops then let him go after several hours in custody. When he gets back to school, the majority of the students think he's the killer. There's also this weird sick-looking kid in the class, and that's important because the sick kid follows John, and when John is alone, the sick kid sewer slides himself with a knife.
To commit seppuku!
John is paralyzed in terror, realizing that he was going to get blamed for his death, but then the salvation appears from around the corner. It's none other than Nancy Drew. A girl in a Victorian-looking dress shows up and gives an inspirational speech about catching the killer, and immediately starts helping in cleaning up the body. Meanwhile, John has no idea what the fudge is going on. Even stranger, she has one eye colored yellow and the other one blue. The girl introduces herself as Asa Fear. She says she believes John isn't the killer and wants to help catch her, and totally doesn't have ulterior motives. John points out that she looks exactly like the killer, but she then counters by saying that the killer is none other than her twin sister. So naturally, she asks John to hide the knife the kid used on himself while she cleans out the body. John then decides to hide the knife outside of the school and returns to the room with Asa. And to his surprise, the body is already gone, totally not suspicious at all. He also lets her know where he hid the knife. Asa and John then dump some exposition. Her family is the Fear family, and they founded the town, so they have a lot of money, power, and influence. According to Asa, the first 2 deaths of the serial killer were her parents. From John's perspective, everyone in town already knows about the Fear family, and on top of that, For some mysterious reason, Asa's mother, MagmaVR, was institutionalized and nobody knows why. We also learn that most of the victims in the past have been mostly male. John then decides to do the main character speech and has a heart-to-heart about trusting one another. Soon thereafter, Asa suggests posing as a couple so that people aren't suspicious about the two of them, but John declines because Lily might get jelly. They try to exchange Discord accounts, but as it turns out, Asa is extremely technologically ignorant because her father was obsessed with the Victorian era and they control every aspect of her life. Also, apparently, the butler usually handles anything she needs.
Gonna jump in right now to bring something up that I've seen almost nobody talk about. Liam seems to have some kind of small attachment to the Victorian era, as it's extremely predominant in this story as well, with like the Elliot family murder drones and even a little bit in Black Dogs. Another thing I find interesting is that Asa's outfit is described the exact same as what Uzi wears in episode 3 of Murder Drones. That being a low-crop black dress, boots, and elbow-high black gloves. It could just be a coincidence, but it was something interesting I noticed nonetheless.
John is still not sure if he should trust her, but feels sorry because of how he's been treated by the school, so he decides to give her a chance. Despite this, he still pushes for more information on Asa. He especially wants to know more about her mother and why she was institutionalized. Asa never answers. She simply gives off a 1-mile stare. Later that day, John decides to dig around for more information. He finds an article that mentions that the Fear daughters have heterochromia, but there wasn't a lot of information. In fact, no one seems to know what the Fear daughters look like. He also finds documents that states MagmaVR disappeared from the correctional facility, but no mentions of her alleged death, like Asa stated. Later that day, John and Lily have their own heart-to-heart moment about trust, despite everything. They go to bed, but at some point in the night, John wakes up. Not by choice, but it almost seems like something is calling out to him. It sounds like whispers coming not from one direction, but everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Lily is still asleep and doesn't seem to be able to hear the whispers. John even decides to cover his ears, and he can still hear the noise completely unmuffled. Uniformed and infinite are the two words John uses to describe the voices. Suddenly, the whispers go silent as a gunshot can be heard. This wakes Lily up, and she thinks that the gunfire came from Chloe Dieter's house. Soon after, 2 more shots can be heard. But even that gets interrupted by a shadow in one of their windows. Lily notices and freaks out. She says that she saw something close one of their windows. Worse still, it looks like whatever it was left the house instead of trying to get in. Neither one of them wants to wander around the house, so they stay put until sunrise. Nothing and no one is found. John then looks for his phone and notices that Max has been texting him. Mr. Dieter and Chloe Dieter were shot outside of their home. By the sound of it, this happened around the same time that John and Lily heard the gunshots. Even stranger, Mrs. Dieter was not amongst the dead. She is currently missing. The detective determined that Mr. Dieter was the one that fired the gun. Their time of death was 2:15 a.m. Then John notices that Lily was getting text messages from last night as well. A student named Anthony texted her asking about Chloe Dieter. He claimed that Chloe was at his house in his brother's room and wanted to know if Lily knew anything about their relationship. This message was sent at 3 a.m. that night. And every message after that is complete nonsense. It just looks like Anthony is pressing random keys and sending his messages with no logic. So John and Lily drive to school in hopes of finding some answers, but their phones begin to fail. Something is terribly wrong with their signal. When they arrive, several students are missing, and there seems to be a medical emergency. Sarah's on the ground and having some kind of spasm attack. Max explains that she had a gun and was acting crazy. She started claiming that she needed to protect everyone from John, but then she started firing the gun on accident and had to be restrained, but soon after she became unresponsive. Everyone noticed that the internet is down and no one is getting any phone signals to call for help. However, there's a landline in the nurse's office. But before anyone could do anything, there's a massive explosion that can be felt throughout the entire town, followed by a second explosion, and right after that, John gets a strange call despite not having a signal. The caller is Asa, and she tells John that the local dam has been destroyed, so now the bridges that lead out of town are completely flooded. She also mentions that she's using a hacked shortwave radio transceiver to communicate, but apparently someone else was using the same thing to communicate with Sarah before she attacked everyone, or so Asa claims. Wasting no more time, John and Lily decide to run for the nurse's office for the landline phone and call for help, but John is still talking with Asa, and when he confirms his location to her, she strangely changes her voice.
You vex me most grievously, Jonathan, and I dare say you would find my disposition quite intolerable were I to succumb to wrath. For within me dwells a shadowed companion, my dark passenger, whose emergence heralds a most dreadful transformation. I fear he stirs even now.
Ow!
Upon entering the nurse's office, John and Lily trip and can't move. There's a strange string all around the entrance, and John is all too familiar with those tendrils. Upon inspection, the entire room is filled with blood and goop of all kinds. There are 2 dead bodies inside, and a third person standing over everyone, the girl in the yellow halogen. Despite the fan art, she's actually horrifying to look at from up close. Also, she's wearing a red corset under her yellow halogen. Just a little detail for the fans next time they draw her! The girl begins to talk to herself and to John in a cryptic manner, like she's not all there. It kind of sounds like she wants John to take the blame for all the killings, and something about the town not freaking out anymore. She also introduces herself as Yellow Halogen. It's not just the description, but also a name. Negotiations go nowhere, and Halogen kisses John to deliver a sloppy payload of yummy gamer girl goo.
Shh. This will only take a second. I only need one thing from you. I just need one kiss.
Eventually, John wakes up and it smells like rot all around him. Things are dark, and it seems like someone is talking to themselves, but before he could focus on the voice, Lily appears. Both John and Lily start acting out and do weird things while trying to figure out what's going on. John is starting to see and hear things that might not actually be there, and Lily is saying strange sentences and holding weapons that weren't there before, and he's even doing things he's not aware of. So Lily herself points this out to him, and he realizes that the same thing is happening to her. So are they both losing it, or is one of them sane? It certainly doesn't help the fact that their hiding spot seems to be filled with bodies, and by the look of the sunlight outside, they have lost an entire day. Lily mentioned that she heard people talking before John woke up. They were talking about zombies and infected people, so naturally she assumes that the town is getting overly paranoid, but that doesn't seem to be the only concern. People are becoming scared of phone calls, specifically because of rumors going around that the dead are calling the living and infecting them. This is too much to handle at this point, so John and Lily consider their options of escaping the town. If all else fails, they will take a gamble and make a swim out of town as a last resort. Fun fact, at no point in this part of the story or moving forward does Hot Mom ever get mentioned. She's stuck at the hospital as far as we know, and we will never see her again or have John and Lily recognize that they ever had a mother. They consider their other options, but most of the exits are flooded. There's a way out into the woods, but allegedly, someone has placed an entire fence in that area with presumably security guards keeping people from climbing or breaking it over. As they exit their hiding spot, they realize that it's a warehouse that was being used as a dumping ground for human bodies. Something odd about the dead was their skulls. They had strange damage done to them. John then gets another message on his phone, but this one claims that Lily wasn't his sister. Was this another hallucination? Either way, it made him progressively more paranoid, and he started arguing with Lily. In a fit of rage and confusion, Lily breaks John's phone and soon after snaps out of her trance, realizing what she has done. Following this, she begins to talk about John and his relationship with the yellow halogen girl, along with the events at the school where that one student ended himself in front of John. Lily shouldn't know any of this, so it's hard to tell if she was secretly stalking John from the start, or if John is hallucinating again. It wouldn't be long before someone found them outside the warehouse. A man with a gun appears and tries to apprehend both of them. He seems to know who they are and considers them infected, despite the viewer not fully understanding what that implies. Before further words could be shared, Lily goes full samurai and attacks the man with a knife she had hidden and chops his entire hand off. While the stranger starts bleeding out, John decides to comfort his sister, but the moment is ruined when another man shows up. He raises his weapon against them, but the siblings are then saved by Asa. As soon as she walks into the scene, she produces the voice of a little boy and orders the man to end himself with his own weapon. The man obeys.
Are there any other 500-year-old little girls that I should know about?
You are a worthless, bitch-ass. Your life literally is as valuable as a summer ant. I'm just gonna stump you. You're gonna keep coming back. I'm gonna seal up all my cracks. You're gonna keep coming back. Why? Because you keep smelling the syrup. You worthless bitch-ass. You're gonna stay on my until you die. Your purpose in life is to be sucking on my daily. Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
Now that's all.
And give somebody else a piece of that oxygen and ozone layer that's covered up so that we can breathe inside this blue trapped bubble. Because what are you here for? To worship me? Yourself.
Asa decides to come clean with a few things and confesses that originally John was meant to be framed for the murders, so naturally John reaches for one of the man's guns and aims it towards Asa while demanding answers. Asa tells him that they have both been exposed to the infection and aren't thinking straight. She mentions that the town's water has been infected, and one of the side effects is paranoia. She then vaguely explains that everything is happening because of something she calls the Gamergates. John has no idea what she's talking about, but she also points out that paranoia helps the killers because it causes people to self-isolate. John isn't buying any of it and pushes for information about the Fear Daughters.
This is the part I knew I'd have to jump in, because it wasn't until I listened to the story a third time that I really understood what was going on, so I'm gonna give my own exposition dump. The Gamergates infected the city's water supply with a paranoia-inducing chemical and kidnapped and killed numerous people, but because of Yelhagen's murders, the police were more concerned about her than the numerous missing person reports. Realizing that the police couldn't deal with the Gamergates until solving her murders, she attempted to frame John to put the case to a close, allowing the police to finally begin investigating the larger threat. But as you can obviously see, Yellow Halogen couldn't do this in time, and the Gamergates managed to cut off all outside communication and transportation with the town, allowing the paranoia to fester inside, causing even more deaths, leading to where we are now. Also, I feel like I should mention, both our MCs have numerous exposures to these paranoia-inducing chemicals, so from this point on, John is an unreliable narrator due to the various hallucinations he has. Back to you, Cake.
Turns out, Asa actually died at birth. The yellow halogen girl is actually Nasfir, but she claims her multiple personalities is a way to keep her memory alive. Halogen also explains that her stinger contains a type of neurotoxin that reacts with her black spit that degrades the body quicker. John realizes some of the implications about the spit and demands to know if he's under Halogen's control, but she insists that she can't control him because of circumstances. He does his best to befriend Halogen, but she remains insistent on saving the town by framing John for the greater good of the town. Before John could do anything else, he steps into one of Halogen's traps and is once again paralyzed by her tendrils. Halogen apologizes and says it's for his own good because of how erratic they were acting, and John passes out. He then once again wakes up in another room full of dead bodies. It appears to be Mr. Maynor's house. He was John's 12th grade bio teacher, but it looks like something else took residence and has started dumping bodies inside. Finally, Halogen is willing to talk more without drugging John. Though, keep in mind, at this point in the story, John has already been exposed to a number of mind-altering chemicals, so who knows if anything at this point in the story is even real. Halogen admits that she's what John would call a siren, but she doesn't like it. When a siren gives birth, there's a small chance that a baby will come out as a siren. If the baby comes out human, then they are immediately disposed of. Ness Fear was born with a twin sister who, according to her, came out human, which means they took her out to avoid future problems. Halogen has remained resentful ever since, but despite this, she still cares about the Fear family's dominance over their territory, and taking leadership is the only way to make changes to their culture. According to her, her mother was the local Queen Siren, and she was meant to take the throne. However, because her mom was institutionalized, Ness was never taught how to be a proper siren. Therefore, they no longer had a local queen. This causes what Halogen refers to as the Gamergates. Based on her own definition, the Gamergates are independent sirens that begin to reproduce on their own because there's not a queen present. This is a problem because it can cause a spike in a siren population, which affects the food supply. It also increases the chances of getting caught. Halogen also tries to explain that the cause of the serial killings were mostly her fault. She tries to feed on humans like a proper siren, but because she was never taught how, her bodies kept getting found. Her plan was to blame it all on John so that the town would stop freaking out, and for the police to move on to other investigations relating to the other people's disappearance. So, John and Halogen decide to come up with a plan, but we don't get to hear what it is. Instead, after they were done discussing it, Lily breaks out of her restraints and starts looking for them. She seems unhinged, and until this point in the story, we never found out if Lily was a siren or not, so John asks Halogen to identify her if possible. But instead of giving us an answer, we switch perspectives in the story. We now see the story from the perspective of Max. Originally, Max was left at the school, but after hearing multiple gunshots, everyone evacuated, and Max, along with a group of survivors, have bunkered down in a random home with Mr. Johnson, Sarah's dad. Unfortunately, Sarah didn't make it and passed away due to too much exposure to the black goo. Someone then started knocking at the door, and it seems to be John. This scares everyone because they all thought John had died back at the school. On top of that, he seems unhinged and was demanding to be let in. While John argues with Max, it's revealed that Max was the one that gave Sarah the gun for protection, but he says that he never told her to harm anyone or knew why she acted the way that she did. However, all of this was a distraction. While everyone was worried about the front door, Lily snuck from behind the house and attacked one of the girls inside. She then lets John in. Lily then transforms into a siren in front of everyone by showing her sharp teeth and stinger. She then commands John to finish them off, and John shoots Penny in the head because Penny is never allowed to be happy. However, before Penny was shot, she tries to say something important to Lily. We don't know what the message was, but we know by a few words that Penny recognized Lily as a siren. Lily then kisses John to deliver more goo onto him, and Halogen makes her appearance in front of everyone, showing that there's multiple. Everyone freaks out and runs away. Turns out, this was all fake. They grave rob the body of a siren to make Lily look like one, and they stage the attack to let the survivors know what sirens are so that they can hunt them down easily. The people they ended up killing were people Halogen pinky promises were sirens. All three of them have a panic attack afterwards because of how cringe the ending to Season 1 was. John and Lily have one last heart-to-heart about honesty and trust. Halogen takes charge and tells them to hurry up because they have to leave. This was only one part of their plan, and now they have to finish the war. Lily then confesses to John that she actually liked hurting people, and she's disturbed by this fact. John agrees and confesses that he too had the same feelings, but he blames the siren catalyst and hopes that the war ends before they both lose themselves in the carnage. Talk about a wild ride. The story moves weirdly slow and fast at the same time. The whole thing practically takes place within a week, and all of this started because John couldn't leave things alone. Admittingly, I didn't like this story the first time. I heard it way back, but coming back to it and looking at every detail has bumped it up to my top 3 favorite stories from Scary Storytime. There was a lot of hard work and love put into this story. I even dare say that it's better written than other fan favorites like Design and Puppet Game. So far, it's the only story that really had me on my seat, writing down every little detail, because Yellow Halogen is actually a really fun murder mystery. It's an incomplete story, but I'm starting to see what Liam was going for, and it's a shame that he couldn't finish it. There's a lot of mystery and detail that were leading up to Season 2, but it seems that it went over the fans' heads.
Yellow Halogen has always been the strangest SSTWL series to me. It has always been the forgotten middle child of the channel in my eyes. A series like Design worked very well because it leaned heavily into its edgy absurdity. This is where Yellow Halogen differs from me. Yellow Halogen feels more like a series Liam really tried hard to make a well-written, planned out, and cohesive story. At the same time though, Liam wasn't nearly as competent in writing as he eventually became. The rough writing of Design is a fundamental part of its style, but I find with Yellow Halogen the writing drags down the narrative as opposed to elevating it as it does in Design. Despite the writing, the narrative itself is easily one of the strongest in SSTWL, and my opinion is second only to Black Dog's. Unfortunately, that's only narratively speaking. The writing bogs down an otherwise amazing story into one of the most forgotten across SSTWL. This is how I describe YH and its place in SSTWL. This series' forgottenness isn't helped by the fact that Liam also delisted the whole thing, and you could only watch it through re-uploads. If this was my video, I'd go into the primarily accepted speculation as to why it was delisted, but luckily, this isn't my video, so I get to do what Liam gets to do and avoid the topic entirely, so I'll let Cake handle this one.
I think one of the reasons why it didn't do so well was due to the brother and sister dynamic. It honestly feels a little incestuous at times, which can really put off a crowd. However, the more I go over it, I'm wondering just how much of it was accidental and intentional. On one hand, Liam mostly does a boy meets girl duo dynamic with some romantic elements thrown in there, and he doesn't have a sister, so maybe he simply didn't know how to write their conversations properly at the start. For future reference to all my single child writers out there, or people who have brothers, take it from me. Having a younger sister does not change the regular sibling dynamic. You will be forever affected by the curse of Cain and Abel. They will be your greatest haters till the day that you die. And despite what your parents say, it's okay to hate your siblings a little. It helps keep the world balanced. On the other hand, I wonder if some of it was intentional. There's a cruel irony to the story. Good intentions always seem to end badly for our characters here. For example, at the start of the story, John suspects his sister of being the killer, while his sister and the school are suspicious of John, only for both of them to be wrong, but at the same time, both become killers by the end of the story. John's insistence in protecting his family got him caught up in all of this when he decided to harass his mom's stalker, and by doing so he directly endangered them. Mom immediately gets sent to the hospital where she's probably gone by now, and Lily almost loses her life a couple of times due to John's involvement with Halogen. Then there's the fact that John decides to trust Halogen because he felt bad about how everybody else at school didn't trust him. And I'm specifically talking about the scene where the random kid offs himself in the school so John could take the blame. In this exact scene, we know for a fact Halogen was the one that made the kid do that to himself, and when she was helping him clean up the crime scene, she intentionally wore gloves and gave him the knife so that she could later use that as evidence against John and frame him for the murders. Halogen is also the reason why his mom is probably gone, and she's the only siren we actually see try to take Lily's life. What I'm trying to get at here is, what if there was an incestuous theme on purpose? In a weird way, it goes with the twisted irony of the story. You're supposed to love your siblings, but not like that. This is particularly tragic when you remember that at the very start of the story, we get the revelation that the stalker just wanted to get his hands on Lily. So seeing John fall into the same kind of depravity as the man he hated the most is, well, I don't even know how to word it other than tragic. And I don't think I'm far from the truth here, because as I said before, by the end of the story, they both get morally corrupted. They enjoyed hurting other people, and it's not entirely clear if it's because of the siren goo they were exposed to, or if this is truly who they always were.
Despite my gripes with the series, I will say there's one thing it excels at, that being the feeling of insanity. As the main characters fall deeper into their deteriorating mental condition, the listener will simultaneously become more disoriented and confused about the events of the story. I'm 95% certain that this is simply a result of amateur edgy writing, but if I were to give one compliment to the writing, it certainly makes you feel as insane and confused as the characters are supposed to be. Unfortunately, this only makes the story good when looking at it in hindsight, as opposed to actively trying to understand the narrative as you listen to it. This is the kind of story you really have to listen to twice in order to fully understand it.
Someone hacked the local tornado sirens, and the tap water tastes like ass.
And with that, we have entered the schizophrenic part of today's episode. Have you ever wondered why John and Lily's eyes are silvery gray? One interpretation I got from this is a blank personality. The only other characters with strange eyes is Halogen, who has one eye blue and the other one yellow. So it's interesting to see that the character with multiple personalities has two completely different eyes. I don't know if the eyes were meant to be a connection to the sirens, but there's definitely a personality trait going on there. The only thing I could find online was this. Gray eyes, with their rare and enchanting hues, often evoke a sense of mystery and emotional depth. This unique eye color, found in only 1 to 3% of people, symbolize individuality and introspection. Their shades can reflect surroundings, revealing hidden complexities which intrigue those around you. Culturally, gray eyes are linked to creativity and wisdom, often associated with captivating characters in literature and folklore. Studies suggest that you might be viewed as more enigmatic with gray eyes, sparking curiosity and admiration. Before we keep going, let's take a step back and go over everything we know, or think we know, about the sirens.
Alrighty, sirens. These suckers are weird and equally complicated, so I'm going to keep this in the most simple bullet point fashion I can. So, what is a siren? Siren is a term assigned to individuals who possess a rare hereditary condition exclusively found in females. What do? They eat people's brains. Why do they eat people? Because they can live hundreds of years longer than a regular human, but their brain deteriorates at the same rate. They need to eat others' brains to keep themselves functional. But boy, if sirens are technically just humans with a rare genetic trait, can't cannibalism expose the sirens to deadly neurodegenerative diseases that come from that? Yes, it can and it does, which is why the sirens have a neurotoxin in their wrist blades. The neurotoxin kills prions in the victim's brain, which prevents sirens from developing neurodegenerative disorders when eating them. So why the weird black sludge from their mouth? The neurotoxin is finicky, as it only works if it's combined with the sludge. The victim not only has to be injected with the toxin, but also has to somehow ingest the black sludge catalyst. Side note, unlike the toxin, which is harmless on its own, the black sludge is extremely hazardous. It won't kill you, but it will make your blood lighter, cause delirium, paranoia, audiovisual hallucinations, and violent tendencies. On top of that, it makes the victim extremely susceptible to coercion to the point of willingly killing themselves at a siren's command. Why doesn't a siren just eat their prey after they've already died? The siren only gains the nutritional benefits from eating the brain if the victim's eaten alive. Why play manipulative games with the victim? Stress hormones cause the neurotoxin to go into overdrive, killing the victim and leaving an overly deteriorated brain that is unfit for consumption. A combination of the delirious state of the victim and the siren's voice mimicry allows them to be eaten without the brain releasing any of the destructive stress or fear hormones. These things seem quite powerful. How have they not destroyed humanity? Well, A, they technically are a part of humanity, and B, they keep their populations and hunting cycles strictly in check as to maintain their secrecy. Sirens seem quite evil. They really aren't. They don't want to be discovered and have no interest in overruling existing government or civilization. They're just forced to kill every once in a while so they don't end up becoming a vegetable for 100 years. Why are they evil in Yellow Halogen then? Well, typically only a siren queen is permitted to have siren offspring, but the sirens in Yellow Halogen have abandoned their traditions and overthrew their queen, and their population became unsustainable, leading to the chaos and uprising of sirens we see in the series. What about the razor wire? Literally no clue. All we know is it's sharp, sticks to walls, and paralyzes you. The way Liam refers to it makes it unclear if it's a biological function of the siren or some kind of weapon they developed. Make your own headcanon, I suppose. Some final small notes on the sirens. Puppet Game gives the detail that simply touching them can paralyze you if the siren wills it, but I can't find or remember any instance of this happening in Yellow Halogen. Also, we don't know if they have to hear a voice first to mimic it. It's extremely unclear. Alright, I think that's everything. Back to Cake's insanity.
Alrighty then. So, the first big mystery I want to talk about is the 5th episode in Yellow Halogen. The 5th video in the series is absolutely the peak of the story. Because of all its details and suspense, this part of the story is right after John has to cover up the body of that boy that ended himself in front of him. Later that day, Lily and him go to sleep, and that's when we get the strange events of that night involving gunshots and potentially a house intruder. And the first thing I want to start off with is the voices. Why is John hearing voices and whispers? It has to be in his head, right? When he covers his ears, it doesn't affect the noise volume, and Lily doesn't seem to hear it, so it's likely this is a siren related. Was a siren, possibly Halogen, trying to control John at that moment? But then wouldn't the voices be more straightforward instead of random whispers? What would Halogen have to gain by sneaking inside to harass them when she already has blackmail on John at this point in the story? Later after that scene, Lily panics because she thinks she saw someone close one of their windows that John could have sworn was never opened. They both panic and bunker down for the rest of the night, and in the morning they don't find any signs of an intruder. Once they go to school that same morning, chaos breaks out due to everything that happens, but one important detail is the information that the water supply has been tampered with by Siren Gamergoo, which is making everyone a little bit crazy. We also know that the paranoia is infectious amongst the infected. So what I propose is that John and Lily were never in any danger that night. Instead, I think they might have already been exposed to the local tap water supply and were suffering from minor hallucinations. This would explain John's auditory hallucinations with no clear commands from a siren. Also, John never actually sees the alleged intruder. Lily is the one that sees a shadow near the window and panics. Right after she tells John, he becomes paranoid about the potential intruder, despite there being no signs of anyone being inside the house the morning after. I also don't think their late night scare had anything to do with the local shooting, but then what happened at the Dieter's house? In the video, we get to hear 3 shots being fired. I'm not 100% sure if the 3 shots were intentional, but the story has so many important details and it's such an important part that I have to consider it as something that Liam wanted us to pay close attention to. We first hear one shot that wakes Lily up from bed. Lily then immediately identifies the location of the shot by guessing that it came from Chloe Dieter's house. However, after a minute goes by, we hear 2 more shots back to back. So there was 1 shot, a big pause, and then 2 quick shots. This is important because the next morning, Chloe Dieter and her father are both found dead outside of their home. The police concludes that the father pulled the trigger on Chloe and then did it to himself. However, the mother of the house is nowhere to be found and remains missing for the rest of the story. All of this happened around 3 a.m. in the morning. So why in the world was Chloe and her dad outside of their home that late at night? Obviously, the dad was controlled by a siren, but why wasn't the killing done inside the house? And why were there 3 shots, but only 2 bodies? Who got shot the first time? Was there some kind of struggle? Did the dad try to shoot at a siren and was controlled after that point? But then why is the mom missing? If the mom is dead like her family, perhaps she was a rival siren. I don't think most sirens want people to know about them, so perhaps the culprit did not want the officers doing an autopsy on her siren body, so they hid the body in a safer area. But none of this explains what comes next. That same morning, Lily and John find out that one of Lily's classmates saw Chloe Dieter later that night at his house, and based on the time of events in the story, Chloe is supposed to be dead in front of her house at that time. The classmate says she's in his brother's room and wanted to know if Lily knew if they were in a relationship. However, after that, his messages no longer made any sense, implying that what he saw was a siren, and he's now drowning in gamer girl goo. The classmate is never seen again after that. So what was that about? Can sirens mimic people's looks? Does this have something to do with Chloe's mom? And why would the student and his brother be important? We never hear from them before or after the story, so we have no idea why their deaths were necessary. It's not like guys can become sirens, right? Alright, now let's talk about Penny's last words. So throughout the entire story, we never really see any other siren in action other than Halogen, which is super suspicious, mind you. But during the ending of Yellow Halogen, dear old Penny is hiding out with Max and some other survivors. Halogen gives the green light to John to shoot Penny, and John does so before Penny could say another word. By the time the story ends, we the viewers have no official confirmation that Penny and the others were sirens, but there is something odd Penny managed to say before her death. From the top of my head, if I recall correctly, Lily is pretending to be a siren, and she was convincing enough that Penny says, "Lily, if you really are a siren," bang. She's shot before she could continue that sentence. And it's a very important sentence because I'm willing to bet Penny was going to say something about the Gamergates. This seems as confirmation that Penny was a siren because no one else has used that term outside of Halogen, John, and Lily. But just like John and Lily, perhaps, Penny simply knew about the sirens. She could have still been a human for all we know, and we would never know because our main characters never actually check the body and continue to blindly trust the one character that has tried to trick them on multiple occasions. But then who are the Gamergates? Well, as Halogen would put it, it's basically rogue sirens without a queen. If there is no queen that makes offsprings, then rival sirens will break off and make their own nest, right? Well, from the perspective of the viewer, we really don't know much. We have no idea who they are or what they want beyond what Halogen says. And like, bro, Halogen literally has multiple personalities, possibly bipolar, with maybe some schizophrenia. And she's giving the exposition to two characters that are actually losing their minds as the story comes to an end. But trust me, bro, the Gamergates are real and are the bad guys. In all seriousness, though, Gamergate is actually a word. Gamergate is an actual word for a type of ant, and it's not just a weird political event from the teen years of the 2000s. Gamergates refers to a mated worker ant that can reproduce sexually, laying fertilized eggs that develop into females. I'll let Boydoid tell you more about it if you want, but something that I found interesting about the definition is that Gamergates are meant to be worker drones. Is this how the Fear family got so wealthy? Do siren queens collect the labor of the drone sirens? Is this what caused the war? Because based on everything we know so far, it's not hard to see why someone would want to rebel against the Fear family. Being a worker kind of implies forking most of your earnings for the queen and being unable to have a family to the point where having a husband or even a boyfriend may have been illegal in Siren society. Now, another detail that I found interesting about the Gamergates is that according to Halogen, whether it's a lie or not, mentions at one point that the Fear family knew about the Gamergates, but for whatever reason, they never took action. So is that what's happening now? Is all of this a plan in motion by the Fear family to finally get rid of all the Gamergates? Let's take a closer look at some of the major events, particularly the destruction of the local dam.
I am going to commit great crime. I'm going to bust nut in water down.
When the dam explodes, Halogen immediately called John to inform him of what happened. But how did Halogen know that the dam exploded? Sure, the explosion was felt everywhere and windows were shattered, but the explosion could have come from anywhere, and I found it a little suspicious that she knew the origins of the explosion so quickly. In fact, Halogen calling John was weird enough. At this point in the story, the phone lines and internet have been cut off. Normal electronic devices are useless, but by some miracle, Halogen just happens to have a hacked shortwave radio transceiver that she can use to make calls to nearby people on their cell phone. That seems like a very specific and convenient thing to have on you in a time like this. No matter how you view it, this is very damning. Either the Fear faction blew up the dam and made preparations in advance to have the advantage, or Halogen knew they would blow up the dam and didn't warn John so that she could keep him around for the fight. I'm just going to go out and say it. I'm very distrustful of Halogen and her family. We never see any other sirens in action, only her. We only ever see her hurting people. We know canonically she's the killer everyone was looking for. According to her story, if you trust her, she never learned how to be a proper siren, and thus couldn't dispose of the bodies properly. But what's weird about her story is that we see her being perfectly capable of taking out multiple people with ease and then getting rid of the body with no problem. Take the SIG kid from school as an example. We have confirmation Halogen made him take his own life in front of John. So, 1, she has no hesitation taking his life and had no problem getting him to do something so extreme. And then she hides his body within minutes with all evidence covered up. In video 5, where everything is falling into chaos, she probes John for information on his location, and within seconds, she reaches the nurse's office where John was heading, and slaughtered the 2 people inside to once again attempt to frame John. or at least that's her excuse. And who could forget that she was willing to end Lily at the spot if John hadn't intervened? But my personal favorite scene is right after this, where John and Lily wake up in the death warehouse, where two armed men try to detain them, only for Halogen to show up and straight up fearing that one guy by mimicking his son's voice. To add the cherry on top, how does Halogen know about the secret warehouse where the sirens dump their victims? She claims it's where the Gamergates dump their trash, but if that's the case, then why would she hide John and Lily there? If she was trying to protect them, why go to the main hub of every killer in town? Why not just stay put at the school? And how was she able to move them on her own? Are sirens actually stronger than they look? Or did she mind control some guys to carry them for her? Were they the armed men? If sirens can't read minds, then how did Halogen know to mimic the voice of the stranger's child? Or were they not strangers? Was she the owner of the warehouse, and she took out her own security guards to save face with John? Literally right after this, she knocks John and Lily out again to move them to another location, and once again, they wake up in a room full of dead bodies. This time, a teacher's home, and by the looks of things, the house is being used as a dumping ground for victims. Why does Halogen keep bringing them into dangerous dumping grounds unless it's her dumping grounds? This doesn't sound like a frail little siren that never learned. This sounds like a professional. Aside from her craziness, we know she's very competent and smart. I would argue she's a master manipulator, constantly trying to make John feel sorry for her, while also making him feel like he depends on her. She immediately tries to become his girlfriend, and eventually starts wearing a scandalous red corset, because reasons. I see that as emotional manipulation. I even questioned John's first encounter with Halogen. So you're telling me that Halogen was trying to hunt some pervert for several days, even though we have seen her control and overpower people with no problem within seconds, and John just happens to show up on the day that she was finally going to end him? Is it possible that Halogen planned this for the purpose of meeting John? The reason I asked this is because there's some weird details in the story. For example, when Halogen breaks into John's house, Hot Mom managed to say that it was Sarah. So this implies she used Sarah's voice, which means she knew who Sarah was and also knew that Hot Mom was familiar with Sarah. And to keep the Sarah connections going, it was Sarah who later in the story gets controlled by a siren to use her gun at the school. How did Halogen know that Sarah was affected by the sirens? During the phone call with the hack radio, Halogen tells John that someone else used a similar device like hers and compelled Sarah to do what she did. It seems Halogen is connected to Sarah somehow. Were they working together? This could explain a lot. Sarah would have told Halogen about John's stalker problem. It always seemed weird that out of everyone in the city, Halogen just happened to hunt the same guy. However, it is possible that maybe Halogen has access to police records. She certainly would have the money, and at the start of the story, John mentions that they have already made multiple police reports against the stalker. Let me take a step back here. Let's go back to talking about the chaos that unfolded. Something that I've thought about is, how did the local tap water get infected by siren gamer girl juice? Does it really take multiple sirens, or is it possible for a single siren to go skinny dipping to get the party started? Because the town being infected was super convenient for Halogen. All she has to do now is call everyone who's nearby and control them with ease. Sure, the Gamergates could technically benefit from this, but we only see Halogen with the ability to make calls. Also, if this is such a big advantage for the Gamergates, then why didn't they use that fact to fight back against John and Lily near the end? According to Halogen, Penny was a siren, but we never saw Penny controlling or ordering anyone around. Instead, she was scared and hiding with the others. Is it possible that people only react to the owner of the infection? Either way, it's still confusing, because in theory, all Halogen had to do was walk in and tell people to attack each other. In fact, at one point during the ending, Lily brings up the fact that Halogen could have done it all on her own, but John just makes excuses for her. Is it possible that Halogen needed Lily to act as a siren to throw off the other sirens? Would they have reacted faster if they had seen Halogen first? Did the Gamergates assume all other sirens are on their side against the Fear family, thus creating uncertainty among their ranks? It just seems so incredibly suspicious that we never get to hear the Gamergate side of the story, and Penny is literally killed before she could give us any level of exposition, almost as if it would have revealed something important about the war. And how do the Gamergates benefit from this war? The entire town is being destroyed. Even without the Fear family at this point, the Gamergates are ruined. They've lost all critical infrastructure, and most people are either dead or dying, which will bring an insane amount of attention from the outside world. The way I see it, the Fear family gains more from this war. Wiping out the entire town guarantees the eradication of the Gamergates and their bloodlines. The Fear family would have plenty of money afterwards to start over, and who else could pull this off? Within 24 hours, the dam was destroyed by powerful explosives, all communications everywhere were halted, and fence perimeters were placed to cover the entire forested area with active guards. If the Fear family were so powerful and influential, then it would make sense they would know what to destroy and have the tools and manpower to pull this off. You want to know something funny? We really don't know who Halogen is. We assume it's Ness by the end, but Halogen has lied and has been deceiving everyone this whole time. Meanwhile, by the time John makes this conclusion, he's completely lost his marbles. Truth is, we have no real evidence on who or what Halogen is. We never met the rest of the Fear family or its workers. We never see Halogen's home. For some reason, she only takes our characters to shady hideouts. She claims to be 19, but her looks barely even match a human from up close. We don't actually know what school she was going to, if any at all. And due to how she looks and acts, I don't think she was attending any kind of school. In fact, for the majority of the story, no other character ever acknowledges the existence of Halogen until the very end, where Max sees her for the first time. Note to self, sirens might have expert camouflage powers like normal octopus. When John finds articles about the Fear Daughters, he comments on how it's only stated that they have that yellow eye condition, but no public pictures of them. Also, kinda weird, there's an article talking about multiple living daughters, never actually giving us a specific number, and you would think that the Fear family would keep them a secret until deciding if the baby is a siren or a client. To top it off, in Puppet Game, she's only introduced as Halogen Fear Queen of the Siren Colony, with a completely different personality, thus making 4 personalities for Halogen. This is strange when you consider the fact that the Halogen persona was specifically made to distance herself from the Fear family's name. Anyways, Halogen could literally just be a random lying squid creature that decided to mess with John for the fun of it. It's kinda weird how the story of N and V from Murder Drones seem to resemble Yellow Halogen a little. We even have a part where John is trying to explain to Halogen that friends aren't just people she can manipulate. So there's that. And well, I guess where I'm going with this is, what if this really isn't Ness Fear? What if Halogen is actually MagmaVR. MagmaVR is the legal name of the official Siren Queen, the mother of Ness and Asa Fear. We keep hearing bits and pieces about her in the story, but no one seems to know what exactly happened to her other than Halogen. We know she was institutionalized in some kind of facility, and then she was reported missing. Halogen originally claimed that the killer got to her parents, and they were among the first victims. Eventually, we find out this could be a lie because we then realize Halogen is the town killer. So John then tries to probe Halogen for more details on her mom and why she was institutionalized, but this triggers some kind of PTSD in Halogen and is unable to answer. And from then on, we never find out what happened. Therefore, officially, we only know that she disappeared from the institution, but no body has been found. So, what if the missing crazy person is actually Halogen? It's rather coincidental that there's an on-soft plot about a missing crazy person, while our main monster girl character is someone that is clearly suffering from multiple personality disorders. Think about it. Ness Fear is never her primary persona. At one point, she even says she does this persona bit to keep both of them alive. Not just keep her alive, but it could just be a poor choice of words. We also don't know enough about how sirens are meant to look exactly. If they can live up to 200 years, then a 40-year-old could easily still look like a 19-year-old, especially if they have any kind of shape-shifting powers. This could explain the mystery of Video 5, where Lily's classmate gets visited by Chloe Dieter at night, despite the fact that the real Chloe died before that hour, and yet her mother is missing. So perhaps the mothers can mimic their daughters' looks, or maybe it's the other way around and sirens have to try and look older to avoid suspicion. As for motivations, perhaps something tragic happened to both daughters, and that's why Martha went crazy, and she can't tell John about what happened. It would also give her a motivation for going after the Gamergates. Now, let's talk about babies. I always thought it was odd that Ness Fear wasn't able to become queen. Sure, she won't live for hundreds of years if it's true that she doesn't know how to hunt, but she could still have babies until a new siren is born. That seems easier to do than to start a war to wipe out the town.
The race war starts now!
But there's a lot of context that's needed on the siren culture to make a better guess, because as of now, the only significant thing we can look at is that the queen is meant to reproduce the hive. So what else does a queen siren do to keep control? I asked this because when it comes to violence, Halogen already has that covered, and she should technically be rich now that her parents are gone. So how the heck did she fumble the ball? Was the queen's title really only held together by being able to seduce randos on the street? Has all of this transpired because Halogen doesn't have game? Is this why she tries to trick John into becoming his girlfriend? Are sirens just glorified ladies of the night? I mean, they do call their victims clients, and Halogen did say they have to be kept happy for a certain period. What exactly does all of that insinuate? Are they giving hanky-panky to the clients before they eat them? Is Halogen just not willing to take one for the team, and that's why she wants to change their culture? Was everyone getting snoo-snoo to death? Well folks, I'm down to my last theory, and I saved the worst for last, the old boys theory. Did somebody get diddled? Bear with me. I always thought Halogen killed her parents. Later in the story, we find out that there is no random killer on the loose, and it's actually Halogen, right? So, If Asa's persona is claiming that the killer got her parents, then does she mean that Halogen got her parents? We know that Halogen is resentful for what happened to her sister and being treated like a doll by her parents, but is that enough to take out her family and start a war? Finding a motivation is important for figuring out the mystery. For example, in A Cold Love Story, the video game, Sarah's origin story gets retconned into a super edgy scenario where her mom gets kidnapped for like a year and ended up conceiving Sarah, which made the mom a little bit crazy. Both parents became distant and resentful towards her, and all of this leads to Sarah losing her marbles. And something that I've noticed is that Yellow Halogen takes some inspirations from A Cold Love Story. Even at the start, we have the creepy stalker trying to do things to John's family. Halogen also behaves a lot like Cold, where you can tell she's making stuff up and winging it as she goes, while being insecure about who she really is. She even has Cold's famous 1 mile Vietnam stare when she can't explain something. Even from John's perspective, it seems a little similar. In A Cold Love Story, a lot of strange things happen all around him that he can't make sense out of because he lacks the context of what Sarah was doing. Kinda like how in Yellow Halogen, it feels that Halogen is running around doing something we aren't aware of, with strange events happening that we can't make sense out of because the only character that knows the full story is Crazy Halogen. So, was Halogen's upbringing similar to Cold? Was mom kidnapped for ransom and got preggers? Or was this a classic Predator dad story? I don't know about you, but that's definitely the type of edge that would get Season 2 cancelled. In a weird way, it explains a lot of the story. It gives a good motivation for Halogen to go bananas, the mom going a little nuts, and having to be institutionalized, parents being resentful, motivations for ending the parent's life, and even multiple personalities can be explained by this, because it's usually a defense mechanism by victims to avoid further pain and trauma. You see, I always thought it was weird that the Gamergates would want to harm the Queen, when the Queen is already rendered useless by permanently being placed in the institution. So, for someone to get her out so that they can harm her, that implies a very personal kind of hatred. On top of that, we don't know exactly how long the Queen was institutionalized, but why wouldn't the Gamergates do the revolt as soon as she was put inside? It sounds like she was in there for years, hence why Halogen never learned to be a proper siren. All the chaos started only after her disappearance. So what I'm suggesting is that in a fit of rage, much like Cold's, Halogen ended both of her parents separately, and this accidentally started the Siren Wars. That definitely sounds like some Cold Love Story shenanigans, and now Halogen is trying to fix her own mess while making it worse at the same time. Oh, my goodness, talk about a ride. I hope this wasn't too much for Boydoi. I honestly didn't think the project could be this big, but here we are.
I'm always happy to have any excuse to go down an sstwl lore rabbit hole again, especially for something as sparsely documented as Yellow Halogen. So thank you, Cake, for having me on, and thank you guys for watching all the ramblings.
I would like to end things with one final thing. I want to ponder a line from the very start of the story. It was an old water wheel that had long since been decommissioned. The broken, rotten wood simply kept around because of our community board thought it made our town look quaint. The shack connected to it was missing its windows and reeked of deterioration, leaving a chilling silhouette in the dim moonlight as I walked past. The structure groaned behind me, cold, dark water lapping at its foundations. I don't know why, but this observation feels important. The town's old water wheel is never brought up again, and yet it stands out so heavily during the intro. Was this a hint for the Fear family? It would make sense that they would have control over some of the town's decisions, and we know the father loved the olden days. It feels very poetic, as if the paragraph itself is telling us the whole story of an old grade structure that refuses to go away despite being outdated, while it rots due to its own corruption from within. When Liam was questioned on Yellow Halogen Season 2, he simply acted dumb and claimed that he completely forgot about the story and what was going on in it. If this is true, then maybe it's for the best. It makes the ending all the better. Rather fitting that in this story of lies, paranoia, and madness, the only one that will ever truly know how all of this started and how it will end is that girl in the yellow halogen raincoat.